In the criminal underworld of Los Santos, gangs have always ruled the streets through fear, colors, and firepower. But behind the badge, behind the oath to protect and serve everybody, another force operates in the shadows, one with budgets, immunity, and the full weight of the law. This is the Los Santos County Sheriff's Department, and buried deep within it is the Operation Safe Streets Bureau. Officially, they're an elite gang suppression unit, tasked with dismantling street crews, seizing weapons, and restoring order. Unofficially, their name is Jump Out Boys. Investigators, insiders, and the streets themselves tell a darker story. One of extortion, planted evidence, illegal hits, and supervisors who move like shot callers rather than peacekeepers. In neighborhoods where gangs battle for corners, the Jump Out Boys don't just oversee the war, they profit from it. They decide who eats, who bleeds, and who disappears. With unmarked cars instead of lowriders, badges instead of bandanas, and the courts instead of the streets, some say this unit has become the most powerful gang in Los Santos County. This isn't a story about criminals versus the law. This is a story about what happens when the law becomes the criminal enterprise.
The Jump Out Boys? They weren't a unit. They were a crew. Same deputies, same detectives, same tactics every night. Unmarked cars, tactical vests with no names, jumping out on known gang members and calling it proactive policing. That was the sales pitch. What they were really doing was padding stats and settling scores. We started seeing patterns, arrest reports that read too clean, body cams that malfunctioned at convenient moments, evidence logs signed by the same two people over and over, guns appearing after suspects were already cuffed, narcotics weights changing between the field and the property room, use of force packets copied and pasted like they were working off a template. Then came the shootings. Every one of them ruled clean on paper. Deputies feared for their lives. Suspect reached. Suspect turned. But witnesses told a different story. Cameras from nearby businesses filled in the gaps body cams didn't. And when you line them up, dates, locations, names, you realize it's the same handful of guys pulling the trigger every time. They thought the badge made them untouchable.
When I took oversight of this investigation, I already knew what we were dealing with. You don't get that many complaints, that many clean shootings, and that much missing evidence without something being fundamentally broken. The Jump Out Boys didn't happen overnight. That's important. This wasn't a few bad actors who lost their way. It was a culture that was allowed to grow because results were valued over integrity. Arrest numbers looked good, gang suppression stats looked good, and too many people up the chain didn't want to ask how those numbers were achieved. I did. From day one, I made it clear this case was going to be built the right way. No shortcuts, no leaks, no internal favors. We ran parallel investigations, criminal, administrative, and civil exposure, because I wasn't going to let anyone hide behind a technicality or a retirement packet. What disturbed me most wasn't just the violence. It was the confidence. These deputies believed they were justified because of who they were targeting. They convinced themselves that gang affiliation erased constitutional rights. Once that mindset takes hold, planting evidence becomes insurance, falsifying reports becomes cleanup, and killing becomes inevitable. That's how you lose the badge long before it's taken from you. We documented everything, every inconsistent report, every delayed booking. Every time a supervisor signed off without asking questions, we mapped shootings against personnel assignments and found the same names rotating through the same incidents. That doesn't happen by coincidence. There was pressure, internal and external, to slow this down, to narrow the scope, to call it misconduct instead of corruption. I rejected that outright. The public doesn't need spin. They need the truth, even when it reflects poorly on the department. Especially then. I won't pretend this didn't cost us. Morale took a hit. Trust inside the department fractured. Some people will never forgive internal affairs for exposing this. I'm comfortable with that. Accountability is not betrayal. If anything, this investigation reaffirmed why internal affairs exists. We are not here to protect the department's image. We are here to protect its legitimacy. The Jump-Out Boys wanted to be feared. What they are now is documented, charged, and dismantled. And as long as I'm in this position, no deputy, gang unit or otherwise, will ever be above scrutiny. That's not personal. That's the job.
I've worn this badge for a long time. Long enough to know that when the public hears about deputies acting like criminals, trust doesn't just crack, it shatters. What was uncovered in the Jump-Out Boys investigation is a betrayal of everything this department is supposed to stand for, not a lapse in judgment, not over-aggressive policing. A betrayal, plain and simple. These individuals were entrusted with extraordinary authority, the power to detain, to search, to use force, even to take a life when legally justified. Instead, they abused that authority for personal gain, for reputation, and for a warped sense of loyalty to each other, rather than to the law. Let me be clear. A badge does not give you permission to lie, steal, plant evidence, or kill. It never has. It never will. I want to commend the Internal Affairs Bureau for doing work that is often thankless and always difficult. This investigation required independence, persistence, and the courage to follow facts wherever they led, even when those facts implicated sworn members of this department. That kind of integrity is not weakness. It is leadership. I also want to acknowledge the damage this has done to the community, to victims and their families, and to the thousands of deputies who serve honorably every day and will now be judged by the actions of a few. That burden is real, and it's unfair. But it's also a reminder of why accountability matters. We are cooperating fully with all criminal prosecutions, federal oversight, and civil proceedings stemming from this case. Any deputy, supervisor, or command staff member found to have participated in or enabled this conduct will be held responsible, regardless of rank or years of service. This department does not tolerate deputy gangs. We do not tolerate silence in the face of misconduct. And we do not protect people who disgrace the badge. Rebuilding trust will take time. It will take transparency, reform, and continued oversight. I accept that responsibility, and I will not deflect it. The people of Los Santos County deserve a sheriff's department that enforces the law, not one that decides it's above it. That is the department I intend to lead.
They called themselves the Jump-Out Boys, a name whispered on street corners and muttered in court hallways. Officially, they were proactive deputies, aggressive crime fighters who jumped out on suspected gang members without warning. In reality, they operated like a street crew with a badge, answering to no one but each other. Evidence didn't just get found, it got planted. Guns appeared in cars that never held them. Drugs materialized in pockets after cuffs were already on. Paperwork was rewritten, timelines adjusted, body cams malfunctioned. When witnesses spoke up, their statements vanished. When victims survived, their stories were buried beneath official reports stamped, signed, and approved. Some didn't survive at all. Questionable shootings were ruled justified before the blood dried. Deaths were chalked up as officer-involved incidents, sealed behind union lawyers and internal reviews that cleared deputies in record time. The streets knew the truth. Certain names carried death sentences, and the Jump-Out Boys were the ones enforcing them. What made it worse was what came next. These weren't rogue deputies who got pushed out. They got promoted. The most brutal among them climbed the ranks, becoming sergeants, lieutenants, bureau heads. They trained the next generation, passed down the same tactics, the same silence, the same code. Connections with prosecutors, internal affairs, and command staff kept the machine running smooth. Money flowed, overtime scams, asset seizures that never made it to evidence lockers, quiet payoffs masked as informant funds. Power flowed even more. They decided who went to prison, who caught a case, and who never made it home. In uniforms pressed clean and shields polished bright, they ran their operation with discipline, hierarchy, and violence. In the end, the Jump-Out Boys didn't infiltrate the Operation Safe Streets Bureau. They became it.
And in Los Santos County, the most organized, most protected, and most brutal gang wasn't flying colors at all. It was wearing badges,